the most commonly used type of database is relational databases. The concept of relational databases was developed by the theoretical computer scientist Edgar Codd in 1969 while working for IBM. Codd introduced a rigorous mathematical model for databases, which allowed for many useful properties and optimizations, which in turn led to wide adoption of the relational model by most of the IT industry, such that nowadays it is considered to be the default kind of databases. Relational databases are also widely known as SQL, often pronounced SQL databases. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It is a special language which is used to send commands to relational databases. SQL will be discussed later in the module. Much of this module will focus on relational databases, and that is because they are an extremely mature and well-designed technology. As a general guideline, unless a specific need arises based on the form of your data or your access patterns, you should generally prefer to use a relational database. A relational database consists of tables, each of which is similar to a single flat file, but with lots of additional metadata to give it structure. Each table can hold any number of data records of the same type, for example, a cities table. Let's look at an example of how the location data for our online store's customers can be stored in a relational database. We will split our data into two separate tables, each responsible for one of the entities we care about, cities and countries. Just like in flat files, each row in a table corresponds to a record for a single instance of that entity type, and each column corresponds to an attribute of the entity. For example, we'll have the record for the City of London as a row within the cities table, and the city's name field will appear in the name column of that table. Tables in a relational database have a well-defined structure known as a schema. This schema is metadata that defines what fields each record in the table is supposed to have, and this means that all the records in a table must have the same structure to conform to the table's schema. Let's now look at all the columns in these two tables, starting from the countries table. The name column is simply the country's name, and the currency column is the currency used there. But the more interesting thing is the country ID column. This special column contains the primary key for each country record. Just a quick reminder, a primary key is a way to uniquely identify a record, regardless of any changes it might undergo. In the case of countries, we most likely will not have two countries with the exact same name, but even so, a country's name might change while the rest of it stays the same. To be safe, we will generally want to create a special numeric ID column that will be used as the unique primary key, and then use that number as a way to refer to the record. Let's look at the cities table now. A city also has a numeric primary key, in this case called city ID, and all the other columns are simple data fields, other than the special country ID column. You might have guessed by now that the country ID is the way for a city to refer to a record in the countries table. The values in this column are the country's primary keys. This is known as a foreign key inside the cities table. A foreign key is a field in a record of one table, which refers to a primary key of record found in another table. When using SQL to retrieve data from multiple tables, we can use an operation known as a join to connect the records in different tables based on these foreign keys. The big difference between a relational database and a collection of flat files or many other kinds of data stores is that relational databases also allow us to define connections between records in different tables. This usage of primary and foreign keys to connect records of different kinds is a main property and a big advantage of using relational databases, particularly in how it allows us to store every piece of information only once. Let's see how this might help us. For example, if tomorrow we are asked to begin always addressing the United Kingdom as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we would just need to make a single change in the name column of the countries table, instead of having to change many rows in the cities table. The next section of the module will focus on the design and usage of relational databases. But for now, let's discuss some other types of databases.